Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I am super excited for this keynote today. And our keynote speaker for this day, day number 2 of the final, I say final, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But the final Dare to Be Great virtual event for Dispatch by Dispatch. Our keynote speaker today is Lauren Sisler, and she is an ESPN reporter, motivational speaker, and author. And she's going to be doing a session called Unlocking the Shackles of Shame, overcoming shame and stigma for personal empowerment. Take it away, my friend.
What's going on, y'all? Thank y'all so much for joining me. Happy, what day of the week is it right now? I don't even know. Happy Tuesday. Yay. I love it. Thank you guys so much for jumping in, joining me. It's an honor. It's a blessing. It's a privilege to be here with all of you today. And before I jump in, I just want to say thank you, every single one of you on here, for being with me, for being with this group, for being part of this. Ricardo is a dear friend, and I just love the work he's doing, and I am appreciative of all the work that you guys go out and do. So I want to empower you as we move forward into our day, into the rest of 2024 and into the new year, because I want to talk about owning our stories. And how do we do that? By unlocking the shackles of shame, and really the mindset and the mantra is becoming shatterproof. So before we get started, I'm going to show you this quick little introduction video to give you a little backstory, little history on kind of how I ended up on this stage, so to speak.
Good morning from the junction. This is what SEC football looks like even 9 hours before kickoff.
Where are we going, Tuscaloosa?
Charles, why don't you tell them why we're going to Tuscaloosa?
We're going to go and spend a little time with Coach Saban. It's going to be pretty cool for me. Hope my shoes don't get dirty down here.
Coming up a top. I can't say top. I cannot say top. All right, we'll try this one more time. In 3, 2. Coming off a top. Fire me up. Let's go.
Information about to get leaked out here in this warehouse 31 Unleashed.
The Jarvius rumor on the street is that you can do a backflip as a former gymnast. I respect the backflip, but I have to see this.
All right. Thank you guys so much again, once again, for being here for this opportunity. And I am just thrilled to share with you just a little bit into my journey and really this whole mindset and concept of becoming shatterproof. How do we do that? How do we become shatterproof and unlock the shackles of shame within our lives? And we help others to do the same. So y'all, I am a sports reporter. I have this amazing opportunity to go out and do 2 things. Okay. Number 1 is I get to ask a lot of questions, and y'all, I love to ask me some questions. And so I'm hoping that today you will jump in this box over here, the chat box, and ask some questions as you guys have been doing and engaging, which is wonderful. So I hope you'll ask some questions. I love to answer questions. I love to ask questions. And so it's part of what I do, because I love to peel back the curtain. I love to peel back the layers when I talk to athletes, when I talk to coaches, when I talk to fans, when I talk to the community, because I want to know more about the athletes. I want to know more about the coaches. I want to know what drives them. What gets them out of bed in the morning? What allows them to go out there day in and day out and put in countless hours to maybe not end up in the win column every single week, to face defeat week in and week out? And so I want to dig under the surface. And then the other part of that is to tell stories, because I love stories. And I think stories are ultimately what connects us, right? Our personal experiences, the things that we've gone through throughout our lives, start to compound. And those are the experiences that shape us and make us who we are. But here's the bottom line, y'all. Sometimes we are afraid to dig in and share our stories. Sometimes we're afraid to let people into our world because we're ashamed. We're afraid of judgment. We're fearful that people will think differently of us if they know this chapter. So we try to brush it under the rug, hide those parts of our story. But ultimately, we really have to step out of our fears and own this thought of becoming shatterproof. So what does becoming shatterproof mean, right? It is developing that mental and emotional strength to face adversity head on, y'all. bend without breaking. It's embracing your struggles, learning to use your struggles to fuel you, to push you forward. And then it's owning your story and learning to fall in love with it every single chapter. Okay. And so that is what it means to become shatterproof. The foundation for living a life full of purpose and joy, regardless of the obstacles that you're going to encounter. Because the bottom line is, y'all, we're all going to face obstacles. We're all going to face challenges, mistakes, choices that we make that we wish we would have gone in a different direction. Maybe it's something in your personal life, a divorce, something you're dealing with at home. Maybe it's an illness. It's an individual's illness. It's addiction. There's all sorts of things that people are battling right now. And I just want to encourage you that you got to lean into it. And so I'm going to take you in a little bit of a storytelling journey here as I tell you a little bit more about my family, the Sisler family. It's my mom, my dad, and my older brother, Alan. And we were a busy family, a sports family, always on the go. And growing up in Roanoke, Virginia, always watching college football on Saturdays. We were watching the NFL on Sundays. We were big Washington fans, and we'd be at the local speed track, NRV Speedway, when my brother would be on the pit crew there. So we were just involved in sports constantly. Loved some NASCAR. And my brother was a 3-sport athlete: football, baseball, basketball. And then me over there was the one always swinging around on the monkey bars, always the one that my parents were like, oh my gosh, we got to do something with this girl. She's got way too much energy. So what did they do? They enrolled me in the sport of gymnastics at the early age of 3. And little did they know that my career was going to take off very, very quickly. Okay. So by the age of 5, I was competing around the state of Virginia. And here's some, fun little pictures that you can see here of little old me with the choppy bangs and the buck teeth and the braces. And then as I started to develop and grow in the sport, it was something that I dedicated myself to. I knew that it was a sport that I wanted to do. It was basically a part-time, almost full-time job, having to go into the gym and train almost 20 hours a week. And it was something that I loved. Of course, my parents, little did they know that it was going to become a bit challenging on the pocketbook, so to speak. Sports are obviously very expensive. This was like taking out a second mortgage on the home, trying to pay for my tuition and obviously travel me all over the place. But it was something I loved. And y'all, we were invested in this. Okay. So we were invested in the sport of gymnastics. And I use the word we because it was not just me, it was we. I put in the time, the blood, sweat, and tears, but my parents were there with me every single step of the way. And so I felt like, look, as I'm training and I'm growing in my career, the Olympics are probably not going to happen for me because, y'all, I'm going to tell you, I am 5'9", way too tall to be a gymnast. When I tell people I was a collegiate gymnast, it's the first question that I get. Basically people saying, wait, really? You're a gymnast? But it was something I loved. And I knew that maybe Olympics aren't possible, but hey, maybe I could get a college scholarship. Maybe that is within reach. And so I started putting my head down and, sending out recruiting tapes all over the country, y'all. And when I say tapes, I mean tapes, VHS tapes. Okay. So I remember sitting at the dining room table with my mom, these manila envelopes and these tapes laying all over the table. And I had those little stickers on the front. I started addressing each of them. Lauren Sisler with my phone number and my email address, y'all, jimtaz1sis@netscape.net. It was very fossilistic, living behind the times. Netscape is not even around anymore, barely is AOL, but here we are. So sending these tapes out all over the country. And some of the schools, of course, I mentioned I'm from Virginia. So some of the schools I was really interested in: UNC, NC State, Air Force Academy, and Rutgers. And Rutgers was like never on my radar. I had no idea where Rutgers was, but I sent out my tape. I knew they had a good gymnastics team, had a good education, academic program. So let's see what happens. Well, I get a call back and they say, hey, we want to bring you in for an official visit. So I drive 8 hours, do the official visit. And honestly, it was a place I felt like I loved, a place that I could call home. And while I was a little bit out of my comfort zone because I'm a country girl, right? I've got the y'alls going on. I get to Jersey and these girls are like, what? Like, what language do you speak? And, I was different, but I embraced being different. So I signed my letter of intent. And what I didn't realize at the time, this was a value. This was a residual value that I was receiving and signing that letter of intent, that scholarship, far beyond the scholarship dollars. This is something that I was going to inherit a new family. I was going to inherit, counselors, mentors, tutors, people that were going to be in my life, not just then in those 4 years in college, but for the rest of my life. And so I'm off to Rutgers, doing my thing, living life, loving life, going to football games. Yeah, we were 1-11 my freshman year at Rutgers. Yikes. I know, not great, but I still was at every single home game. I was a true Rutgers fan. Scarlet Knights, go Scarlet Knights. So obviously living my dream, doing the gymnastics thing. Well, fast forward to my second semester and I am studying for midterms. Well, at the time I wanted to be a sports doctor. So that was my lifelong dream. I want to be a sports doctor. I'm an athlete. I want to help athletes go back out there and get back on the field of play. That was something that was really important to me. Okay. And so I thought being a sports doctor could kind of pave that way, or an athletic trainer. So I'm doing my bio courses. I'm doing all my pre-med stuff. And it was a big adjustment for me, but I'm hanging in there. So I'm studying for exams and I'm talking to my roommate, Kara, that you can see here on the middle of the screen. And, we're just chatting it up, and I pick up the phone and call my parents like I always did. Not a day went by, even when I was away at school, that I didn't talk to my parents. Not a day went by that we didn't have a conversation. I was so close with my parents. They were my two best friends. And so we always carried on that conversation, burning up the phone line. So I talked to my mom first, talked about a little bit of gymnastics, and then she handed off the phone to my dad. And my dad had just celebrated his 52nd birthday. And we were just talking a little bit about like, oh, I can't wait to come home this summer and celebrate with you. I'm sad that I'm missing out on your birthday. And, he said, look, Lauren, we love you and we are so proud of you. And we hung up the phone, said, I love you, said goodbye. And that was it. And so I thought nothing of it, set my alarm clock, drifted off to sleep. As I start to, go to sleep, all of a sudden I wake up abruptly to my phone ringing, and several hours had passed. I look at the clock and it's just after 3 a.m. And I was like, who's calling me in the middle of the night? And I go grab the receiver off the desk, and I look at the receiver, and across it is my home phone number. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? I answer the phone with hesitation. Hello. And my dad on the other end said, Lauren, I need to talk to your brother. I said, well, what's wrong? He said, Lauren, I just need to talk to your brother. Well, my brother at the time was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, in the military. He was a parachute rigger in the Navy, and he had just gotten off watch, and my dad was trying to frantically get in touch with him. I knew something was wrong. And he said, I need his phone number. So I find my brother's phone number. I recite it. My dad said, okay, I'll call you back. No more than 30 seconds went by. I get a phone call back, and my dad on the other end pauses. And then he says, Lauren, your mom died. And I was like, what? What do you mean mom died? I just talked to her. She's 45 years old. It's the middle of the night. I don't understand. What? And he said, Lauren, I can't explain it now. Get on the next plane you can, and I'll be at the airport to pick you up. So I'm frantically packing my bags, trying to navigate how I'm going to get this plane ticket, calling the airlines. This was back before you could just log in and book a ticket. And so I get a ride to the airport. My roommate goes with me, drops me off, and I get on that plane, and we are it feels like an eternity. All I wanted to do was run and jump in my parents' arms. All I wanted to do was tell my dad. I wanted my dad to tell me everything was going to be okay. And so I'm running through the terminal as my plane touches down. I run through that terminal, and I'm looking around, waiting for my dad to pull up and pick me up. And instead, it's my cousin and my uncle that pull up. And of course, I'm confused. I'm just what's going on? But then, my dad was at the hospital having to take care of things with my mom. We lived out in the rural country, so over an hour from the airport. So we're going to get in the car. We're going to drive, and we're going to go see my dad. And so we get in the car and we start driving. And I just remember my heart was just beating. And finally, in that silence, I worked up the courage, and I said to my Uncle Mike, Uncle Mike, I want to see my dad. Where's my dad? And he looked at my cousin, and then he turned around and looked at me, and he said, Lauren, I'm sorry, but your dad's passed away too. And I remember feeling that so deeply and so heavily, just sitting in the back seat of that car, thinking my life has been turned upside down. My world has been turned upside down. My parents, my two best friends, my everything, the two people that literally tucked me in at night are gone. And so now I'm having to pick up the pieces and figure out how I'm going to do this. 2 weeks after burying both of my parents, I decided to go back to school, and it was an absolute roller coaster ride, y'all. Just A's and B's were the norm for me. Now C's and D's became the norm. Never seen an F on a paper in my life. And I am drowning. I am struggling. And I am literally flunking out of school. I'll never forget my first visit back home in the summer. I went back to stay with my aunt and uncle, my mom's sister, my auntie Linda, and my Uncle Mike. And I was standing in the house that my parents own, the house that we grew up in. And I'm standing there next to my brother as a moving truck comes up the driveway. And within 2 hours, y'all, everything in that house was boxed up, taped shut, thrown on the back of that moving truck to be auctioned off to the estate to complete strangers. That was my new reality. There was nothing left. The cars were repossessed. The house went into foreclosure, and we were left with nothing, y'all. Nothing. And now I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet again. I go back to school, and once again, I'm struggling. And honestly, I felt like I just wanted to give up. And my coach finally sat me down for a tough love conversation after about a year of going through this and about a year of dealing with all this. And she said, Lauren, we love you. We are here for you. We want to help you. But the bottom line, Lauren, is you've got to stand on your own 2 feet and take the first step. Because I was just struggling and I didn't want to do the work. I just kind of sat there, didn't want to do the work. Well, everybody feels sorry for Lauren. So let's just sit here and live life, right? Well, the bottom line is I had to make that choice to get up and stand on my own 2 feet again. I had to make that choice. And so thankfully, by the grace of God, I decided to stand on my own 2 feet. I got a tutor in every class. I started going to study hall, and I was able to get my GPA back on track. I switched majors, went into communications, and that was it, y'all. I was so grateful for that, grateful for just that push and that tough love that I needed from my coach. And so I graduate, and I am off into the world, trying to navigate this whole sports broadcasting thing. And y'all, it was crazy. It was a crazy, wild journey, just going in and out of different markets and cities. I was in Parkersburg, West Virginia for a little while, finally landing in Birmingham, Alabama in 2011. And it's funny because Birmingham was also never on my radar, but it was a place that I fell in love with. And I got to tell you, I quickly learned that college football is a real thing. College football is like the deal in the South. And I'll tell you a quick story here. The Walk of Fame in Tuscaloosa is this thing where all the team captains from the previous season come back and they put their hand and cleat print in the cement that you can see there. Well, I was told as I'm standing there getting ready for the spring game. It's a glorified scrimmage, y'all. It's basically 50,000 fans show up to watch a scrimmage. Kind of crazy in the South. Yes, I know. So I'm here at Alabama. It's my first spring experience here at Alabama. And my photographer says, go down the street. I need the tripod. So I take off running. I go to get the tripod and I start sprinting back. Well, as I'm coming back, I can hear the sirens. And what that means is Coach Saban and players are on their way. It is time for me to turn on the jets because they're going to be here and I need to outrun them and get there before them. So as I'm running back, I flash my badge to the media and I am running towards my photographer, and there's this big circle of people. And I'm thinking, okay, well, the quickest way to get the tripod to my photographer is to go right through the middle. Well, the problem with that is what I didn't realize is that sea of reporters, those reporters that were standing in a circle were actually there protecting the wet cement. So as I go running through that, literally my foot steps in the wet cement and I'm looking around me. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? What just happened? And I look down and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired. What just happened? And I look back up and thankfully I look back over to my right and I see this man that stands up, and I'm pretty sure he had a halo and wings that day. And he kneels down and he starts patching up the cement. And he says, well, we were expecting someone like you to come along one day. And he patches it up. And I can officially now say I am the first and only female to ever be enshrined in the Alabama Walk of Fame, my friends. Pick or it didn't happen. So that was kind of my christening into the college football world, y'all. And obviously something that, was a unique experience, but I share that with you because things go off script all the time. We are constantly being challenged. We are constantly having to go in a different direction. And for me, it was something that ended up being funny and humorous, but at the time I was mortified and I was scared. And I was like, Nick Saban is literally I'm going to get fired. Like, how am I going to do this? But it just goes to show that in life, sometimes you just got to laugh. Sometimes you got to cue up the blooper reel and you just gotta live a little. Right. And so that was an experience for me. I continued to navigate throughout the tunnels of sports broadcasting, covering different teams, mostly in the SEC. Finally, in 2016, landed on ESPN. And what I realized as I punch up this picture here, you see the confetti falling on the field. Okay. And so for me, as a sports reporter, I was like, cool, I get to be out here. The confetti's raining down. Like, this is so awesome. This is so amazing. But what I realized is there's so much more to that. And it took some growth and maturity to realize that that confetti falling on the field is more than just a victory. That's more than a championship, right? This is a story, layers of stories, in fact, that I believe ultimately help to shape these young men. So these men that are hoisting this trophy, these men that have just won this national championship, they didn't do it alone. It takes a village. And we're not just talking about the coaches. We're talking about the assistant coaches, the nutrition staff, the doctors, the tutors, the counselors, the parents, the grandparents, the community, the pee-wee football coaches, everybody that went in to making this championship possible. And those are stories that come together that mold us and shape us into who we are. And I'll tell you, as a sports reporter, I have this opportunity to go out on the field and tell a story. Usually I only have about 30 seconds to tell a story. And I remember this specific story about this young man, this young man named JJ Weaver, a linebacker at Kentucky. And you can see there his right hand has 6 fingers. And it was an interesting story he told me about. He was, faced with a lot of challenges growing up. And, he had just lost his dad to gun violence and tore his ACL. And he was going through all this. And then he finally decided he wanted to speak up about his 6 fingers. It was something he hid from for a very long time because he was fearful people would judge him. So he hid those 6 fingers, would stuff them into one finger of a glove until his hands would hurt. People bullied him. People called him an alien. Well, I wanted to tell his story because I thought his story was powerful and I thought that it could inspire people. So the guy's up in the booth, they're up in the booth talking, and we have a little bit of break in the action. And they toss it down to me and say, hey, Lauren, you got a great story on JJ Weaver. Tell us about it. And I start sharing this story about JJ Weaver. And as I'm sharing his story, I tossed it back up to them. And I was so disappointed, y'all, because I felt like I only got 30 seconds to tell his story. And it just wasn't enough. But what I later found out, 30 seconds was all I needed, because this woman here, Kate Cameron from a local elementary school, 3rd grade teacher, wrote into the athletic department after seeing that 30-second story to say, hey, I saw the story on JJ Weaver. When I was born with extra fingers on my hands. And I also have 2 students in my 3rd grade class that were also born with extra fingers on their hands. And this was something that touched JJ so much that he decided to go in and do a field trip to the elementary school to talk to this class, to talk to these young kids. And I look at this and I think, you know what? These kids, their lives, the trajectory of their lives could be changed forever because of this act of kindness for him to go in there and talk to them about their differences and talk to them about how beautiful it is that they are unique and different. And this story ended up getting picked up on College Game Day, viewed by millions. And I think about the ripple effect of all that, y'all. The ripple effect of this story, and it only took 30 seconds. Because, y'all, it only takes 30 seconds to have the courage to step out of your fears, to share your story. It only takes 30 seconds to connect with someone, to share that, and to have an impact. But here's the problem, y'all. I, like you, have a story. And there was a point in my life where I didn't have the courage to sit here and to share my story, because I was ashamed of my story. I was ashamed of who I was. I was ashamed of where I came from. And I was ashamed of what happened to my parents that day on March 24th of 2003. And many of you are probably wondering if I was going to share that part of the story. What happened to our parents? How did this all happen? Well, there was a point in my time where you would have gotten the sugar-coated version. Well, my mom, she had degenerative disc disease. My dad had chronic back pain. They were both going to a pain management doctor. And I basically told people that they were both dealing with chronic pain and that my mom died of respiratory failure and my dad died of a heart attack. Because, y'all, that sounded so much better than my parents died of overdose. And that's the problem, y'all. I told this sugar-coated story over and over and over and over again because I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want people to think differently of me. I was afraid that I would be judged, and I was afraid maybe I wouldn't be up for awards, maybe that I would, if I applied for jobs, people would think differently and think, oh my gosh, wow, she comes from a family of drug addicts. Maybe, are they bad people? Is this a character flaw for her? Is this a problem for her? Is this something that she's going to be dealing with and that we're going to be dealing with? Those are the things that my brain told me constantly over and over and over again, so much so that I literally told these prefabricated stories. Oh, I'll be done in like 5 minutes. Thank you. have to check out of my hotel room, y'all. I told you, Ricardo, that might happen. Anywho, 12 o'clock, they're timely. Yeah, so I would tell these stories over and over and over again. And it was up to me to preserve my parents' legacy. And I felt like I couldn't use the word overdose or addiction in the same sentence with both of my parents because I was ashamed. Because what did life and what did society tell me growing up what addiction was? It told me that addiction was bad, that addiction was a problem. It was a moral failing. It was a choice. And I felt like through my entire childhood, growing up, even though my dad was an alcoholic, I would compartmentalize it and I would just kind of move on and I would just forget about it and not think about it. And again, I just wanted people to see my parents in the best light. I wanted them to see who they were for who they were and what they brought to this world. And so I ran from reality for years and years and years and years. Told this lie, told this sugar-coated story, till finally my auntie Linda, my mom's sister, got through to me. She said, Lauren, look, your parents aren't defined by how they died, but by how they lived their lives. And you have the opportunity now to carry on their legacy. And that's when I started to realize, wow, like my parents were great people. And they were sick and they were dealing with this addiction, and addiction eventually took over. And eventually they were abusing their medication. Eventually Oxycontin was then fentanyl, and then they were having the fentanyl patches. And eventually they put it in the freezer, made the decision to put it in the freezer, cut it open, and overdosed on it. And that was something that I could just never imagine my parents doing. But y'all, they were sick and they were consumed in it. And the saddest part of it all is they didn't have the courage to speak up. They didn't have the courage to speak up and share what was going on because they were too afraid of shame as well. And that's what I want to encourage you as we're here today. I want to encourage you to find your voice. Whatever it is you're going through in life, find your voice. Find your voice because it's important to lean into that. Because you have a voice and you have a story, and that story matters. You got to speak up. You got to share some of those internal battles and those internal struggles, because I'm telling you, when you can do that, you can break those shackles of shame. I was literally tied to those shackles for so many years. But when I learned to speak up, when I learned to share my story, when I learned that it mattered, those shackles of shame burst and I felt free. And here's the thing, my parents aren't less than. They're not less than because of their struggles. We all have struggles. And that's what I realized in this process and in this journey. And so as I come back to that whole becoming shatterproof mindset, what does that mean, y'all? Becoming shatterproof means running. Don't run away from adversity. Run towards it. Attack it. Because y'all, you can't outrun it. You'll never be able to outrun it. So use it as fuel to drive you forward. Use it as something that can be your foundation to build on, to build that resilience. And I think that's something that we can all lean into, because y'all, we all have a story. Every single one of us has a story. And it wasn't until I learned to lean into my story, every single chapter, and then I learned to fall in love with my story. I want to encourage you all. Whatever it is you're going through, whatever challenges you're facing, whatever life has in store for you, whatever has been taken away from you, y'all, you have a story, and I want to encourage you to fall in love with it. Your story matters, and your story is something that you can share with courage. You can find freedom in sharing your story. You can find freedom in owning your story, and then ultimately you give others the permission to do the same. And what a beautiful thing when I talk about ripple effect, the ripple effect that comes with owning your story, sharing it, and loving it. And so I just want to encourage you all today as we wrap up to lean in, to adversity, to attack it head on, because it's coming your way and you're not outrunning it. And learn to fall in love with your story. Embrace every single chapter and find meaning and purpose. I love y'all so much. Thank you very, very much. And if there's time, I'd be happy to answer a couple of questions. I know that we got to wrap up and get into the next session here in about 10 minutes or so. But I really appreciate you guys, appreciate this opportunity. And y'all, you guys are doing great work out there. And I don't ever want for a moment for you to see that your work is less than, that your work is not doing an impact, because it is. Your work is so tremendous. And I think that the work that you do can be even greater if you can unlock those shackles of shame, own your story, and go out there and use it to connect with others.
Hell yeah. Well done. Oh my God. That
I feel
was
like
that was
I'm
amazing, my friend.
sprinting.
I kind of heard the knock there in the background, and I thought, "Oh."
It's 12 o'clock. I'm in Central Time, y'all. So it's 12 o'clock. But she smiled and said, "Okay, we're good." So
Awesome. I've only had that happen to me once, and it was the same thing. I was in a live in a roundtable thing, and I turn around, I'm like, "I have to mute this. Hold on."
I know, I know. Well, and I told you, I said I tried to call the front desk to say, "Hey, I'm going to check out like 12:15," but nevertheless, here we are. So all that to
Yes.
say, y'all, thank you so much. And hey, you mentioned the book Shatterproof. It is out now. I have it somewhere in my bag here. Let's see if I can find it close by. It might be somewhere else. Hold on. I want to show you guys real quick. Um, Here it is.
Yes, congratulations on the book.
Called
That is amazing.
Shatterproof. Yes, came out in October, and I'm just grateful for it, and it really just kind of digs into the story. So I know a lot of you guys probably have a lot of questions, but it really digs deep into the story of kind of what happened, the family dynamic, and that sort of thing, and then really just some life lessons that you can take from what that means. Becoming shatterproof, right? Somebody takes a baseball bat to your life, but we can all stand back on our own 2 feet and become shatterproof, no matter how difficult and how challenging that uphill battle seems. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Also, I'd love to connect with you on social media. Hit me up at Lauren Sisler on all the networks. Also on LinkedIn, send me a message. You can also email me, lauren@laurensisler.com, if you want to connect. My DMs and stuff are open. So thank you all so much. Thank you for the work you do. Would love to hear y'all's story. And thank you.
Hell yes. Thank you very much. We are going to be going to the next one. All that information is on there, and it's going to be available in replay immediately after we end this session, so everybody can come back and watch it as many times as you want. Make sure to reach out to Lauren, pick up her book, Shatterproof, and we'll see you all in the next one. Thank you again, my friend. Thank you so, so very much. I appreciate
Hi,
it.
y'all. Thank you.